Welcome to the Vocal Lab podcast with your hosts Shelby Rollins and Jason Catron, bringing you the best from the music industry. Get ready for first-class conversations packed with exclusive techniques and transformative insights, all designed to help you reach your top note. Hey everyone, welcome to today's show. I'm super excited about this one, Shelby.
I'm excited too, Jason.
Do you know why I'm excited?
I think you should tell the people.
The people, I'm excited because the person with us today is none other than Sarah Barlow, a longtime friend.
Hello.
And hello, Sarah. Welcome.
How's it going?
Great.
Good.
Sarah is one of these amazingly creative people that, you know, those people, Shelby, that you're just like, gosh, they make me kind of
Angry.
Yeah. I was going to go with sick, but sometimes sick and angry, right?
That's good.
My grandma always used to say that she had a sick headache. We're like, what does that mean? A sick headache? You either have a headache or you're sick. She just get a headache. She's like, I've got a sick headache.
Okay.
No, she's just one of those people that is just so, one, she's amazing, and I'm talking about her even though she's right here. She's amazing in every way, incredibly cool, incredibly amazing human, but she channels that through the most insane creativity. Mm-hmm. And to levels, you guys are going to be blown away when you hear some of her stories. But the top levels of creative direction and the whole creative process. And I myself need someone to help me do that.
And a pretty bomb photographer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And a crazy great photographer.
Thank you.
Which is actually where it all started, didn't it, Sarah, with photography?
Yeah.
Hey, Sarah, welcome to our show.
Thank you. So good to be here.
Yeah, it's really good to be here. I mean, it is really good to be here and to be with you.
It's great to be with me, isn't it?
With me.
Actually.
Welcome. Oh my God. Amazing.
My
All right,
mind.
maybe Sarah needs to rescue us.
Yeah.
Sarah, why don't you tell us a little bit about your story and how you got started in this industry?
Yeah. And I got started actually when I was 17.
Oh, wow.
So, 50 years ago, something like that.
3 years
Wow,
ago.
you look
Come on.
amazing.
No,
For
yeah. So
7.
So 17, I started in wedding photography, and I was in that for a good 4 or 5 years, something like that. And then I slowly transitioned into music just because of what was around me, what I was inspired by. I had a lot of people that were, my cousins were in a band, so I would be on tour with them and all that. And so I ended up actually down here in Nashville. And I ended up doing a shoot down here, and I was like, wait, this is not actually what I was wanting to do. Like, I had a background in, with the weddings, like I could just do whatever I wanted, and I was very like self-directed, and I didn't have any people standing behind me,
As long as the pictures turned out, you were great, right?
Assessing my every move and all of that.
And you, as the photographer in a wedding situation, you're kind of the one telling everybody what to do, where to stand. Hey, I need you next, and all of that.
Exactly. Versus like I was on this one shoot, and I just could hear behind me like, oh, she's not doing this right. She's not doing this right. Like, why is she shooting like this? And I just was like, shut up. This is literally like.
Did you ever have a wedding go bad? Like the photos didn't come out?
Well,
because I've heard of this happening.
The only time it actually went bad was my best friend's wedding.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh no.
Really?
This is actually so sad, but it was her wedding. I was the maid of honor, and I shot the wedding, and I had brought some people to help me.
How'd you do that?
I know.
I just, like when I was not
with my iPhone.
Sarah invented the selfie. That's why she's here.
Literally. I just had like a, like one of those things, the drones hovering over.
Yeah.
And so it was right at the beginning of my career. Like I think I was 18. And so like we were just still, I was still downloading cards at the time and writing over them during the wedding. I didn't have a ton of gear. And so we downloaded one of the cards, or we thought we had downloaded all the cards of her and her husband together, and it hadn't gotten downloaded.
Oh, no.
And so like it gets to like a week after, and I'm like going through the edit, and I don't see any of those shots. And I was so devastated, but also at the same time, it was one of those things like I had done it for free. So it was like not necessarily a client scenario.
Yeah.
It was like a hard thing to learn on, which is like one of your best friends. But at the same time, like, it ended
what do
up
you do?
like working
Are
out.
you still
ahead.
friends?
We're still really
Okay,
good friends.
Then it all worked out.
Yes,
Everything
exactly.
worked out.
But that like you never let that happen twice. Like that was very much a thing.
Yeah.
Now I I mean, I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, where's my hard drives? You know? Like it's very much like people are like, what's the one thing that you'll run out of the building with? Like if you know, like in a fire or something like that, it is hard drives. Absolutely.
That's it. You got them right by the bed.
But anyway, so I had that background, and then to be in, to move into this other realm where you have all these people that are assessing you was such a different vibe for me.
So you had a musician hire you to do a shoot? Is that what happened?
It was actually my cousins.
Okay.
So thankfully, again, this was a scenario I can kind of practice on a little bit.
Hey, this is great. You learned through the family trials.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it actually turned out great. But it was just still, I wasn't used to any type of critique. Like I was so used to just like people being all amateurs, like at a wedding. They don't know what to expect from a wedding photographer, you know?
When you're young and you can produce pretty good stuff for your age, they just overflow with compliments.
Yeah, I was literally like this like little child prodigy essentially. Like I was like, I'm 17, and they're like, wait, how are you accomplishing this work? You know, so yes, of course. And then you move into like a professional industry, and then you're like, oh God.
Well, what was it that drew you to photography first of all? Did you just always have this creative eye as a kid?
Actually, it's so funny. I was homeschooled growing up my whole life. And so my dad was very much like always teaching us about, like writing a big vision board and like what are the things that you're wanting to do. And I got to kind of shape my career or my schooling around like the things that I was interested in. And I actually had like a list of, when you're young, you have that list of like, I'm going to be in the Olympics and this and this and this and like in the Olympics for 2 different things and like all that versus like
to get through all of this.
Truly. And so the top was architecture at the top of this like eight list thing, and at the bottom was photography. And so it wasn't necessarily like obviously my top pick, but I just started shooting. My dad had bought me a camera for my graduation, 8th grade graduation, and I was just shooting around, and everyone was complimenting. But at the same time, like, don't they all compliment like, little young kids who are like, oh my God, this is so good. And so I would just shoot around like my siblings and stuff like that. And then I actually ended up we had our family photos done by this like incredible, like very prestigious like photo studio in downtown Chicago, or near downtown Chicago. And I was just fascinated by how they worked with us, and like they had been around since like 1918 or something like that. They were like 4th generation run studio, and I was like, this is actually fascinating. I think I would want to actually get into this more. And we didn't live anywhere near them. We ended up 6 months later moving like 5 minutes away from the studio. And so I was like, Dad, can you call them and ask them if I can work there? And he was like, nope, you have to call if you want to work there. And so he's like, this is going to be the difference between, like how, confident you are in the future and all that sort of stuff. So I like put together like a thing that I read off the, like my little card, like reading cards. I was like, hey, can I like, possibly work for you guys, and like I'll just do it for free and all this stuff. And they were like, we have too many people, we don't know what to do with everybody. And they were like, maybe sometime in the fall. And of course they didn't call in the fall. And I was like, let me just try them. So I called them back, and they were like, actually, yeah, come on in. So I worked there for 2 weeks, and then they were like, you're doing such a good job, we have to pay you. So for a year and a half, I worked at the studio and basically got taught everything within photography. So that was like from like 16 to 17, something like that, age wise, maybe 18. And then by the time like my then weddings were kind of starting to take over, and they're like, you're not really working here anymore, do you want to just be done? I was like, yeah, I guess we're done. But I got paid to like learn everything that I know, basically.
So that's cool, because it was really, it was clear that you were being groomed to do this for your life.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to choose to do it, this was a path you could definitely go down.
Right. Absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious, come back to that story where you were shooting your cousin's music video. Was it a music video?
Just photo shoot. Yeah.
And you had these people whispering behind your back that you're doing it wrong. Were those the creative directors?
Yeah, it was.
So you're like, let me just be the creative director. Is that kind
Truly,
of how the transition began?
Well, it was more so it was my first inclination, and it's still my inclination, is that I think that some of the best photo shoots are not with anybody around. And so it's
mean just
like an audience of people on
like
your
a
team.
Just
your manager's
me
not
and the
there
subject, basically.
Yeah.
You know, and
I would feel that way as if I was the subject, because I have a hard time sometimes being the model and you have to update headshots and stuff like that. I'm like,
right. Imagine if like we were just friends. Imagine
tell
if
me
we
what
were
to do. I don't know.
Right.
And
Imagine
if other people are around. Forget it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I think I agree with that too.
Yeah, because if we're just hanging, like if we were just like after we were hanging the other night, and I'm just like, hey, let's shoot real quick. It would be the most natural scenario.
Right.
Completely natural.
Versus like if you have like 20 people behind and then you have to get into a zone, because I have like I'm really intense in the philosophy of photography. And so I believe that like you're emulating me. So any expressions that I'm making, like if I'm telling you to be somber, I have to be somber. If I'm telling you to laugh, I need to be upbeat.
Yeah.
So because of that, if you as the subject is looking back and you're like seeing all these different faces, like what are you actually going to be able to truly bring?
Fascinating point I never thought about. And I'm like in my mind right now, I'm just rolling back to like how many shoots I've done, and the photographer, if they've not been cueing me to the energy or the emotion, I've struggled to bring it.
Yeah.
Right.
I've never thought about it that way.
Right.
But
It's
that's literally everything.
I protect it more than anything. Like I have a business partner that we shoot together a lot, and I like if we've ever gotten into like a fight or anything like that, I'm like, we have to be good. Because that truly is, it sets the tone for the photo shoot, and then it also sets the tone for what I'm bringing towards the subject.
Yeah.
You know, is it confident? Is it whatever?
Right.
And so I have to foster that, basically. You know.
So what was that moment that you knew? I mean, you've been doing all this stuff at early age. You start working in with some musicians, cousins at first. What was that big moment where you're like, okay, I'm going all in. I'm gonna be a photographer. I think that was probably the first decision, right? And then the creative direction came out of that.
Yeah, right.
Which is a natural progression, for sure.
Exactly, right.
But what was that big moment? You're like, this is it. I can do it. I'm gonna
Honestly,
do it.
I don't know if there was a big moment, because it was very much like I'm the type of person who I didn't realize I was this type of person until like more recently, where it's just like I kind of just keep saying yes, and then I all of a sudden realize I'm like in something, you know?
No, I get it. I'm the same way.
Yeah.
Shelby will agree with this. I do have goals and plans of what I want to happen.
Yeah.
But I don't always have this strategic pathway to get there, because for me, it's always just been having conversations and allowing 100%. The path to clear itself for me.
Right.
And that sounds like it's been your same trajectory.
It absolutely is. And I think it's actually both are important, where
of course.
like I very much have written out everything that's happening in my life right now. But I think there's something to just living and saying yes, because because we've written that list out, I think then we're given like this new pair of glasses that then we're able to like, it helps us make those decisions.
Yeah, and you start seeing it because you're looking for it.
Right. So then it's like programmed in our subconscious sometimes, like weirdly.
It's like science, brain science. I've heard, I forget what this stands for. It's the RAS system in your brain. I cannot, reticular something system. I cannot remember what it stands for. That is like that concept of like, if I bought a blue car.
Yes.
Now
I was getting ready to say the car thing.
Yeah.
Blue cars
I bring that up. I bring that up almost every day. That example.
Yeah,
I was literally starting to say that.
Yeah,
look at that.
No, it
we're
really
all
is.
Gonna see blue
because it's
cars.
like it's not like everyone all of a sudden bought blue cars, but all of a sudden it's your sensory, like it's your something bias. It's called like but basically that is exactly what I
that
believe
part of your
what
brain
it is.
Turning
and
on.
So
I truly it filters through the things that you're looking for and helps you to identify.
Yes, and specifically in the subconscious decisions.
Yeah, and I think when people talk about manifestation,
that's what it is.
We like to think it's super woo woo, but there's actually some brain science.
Really very much, because there was so many times, and that's what I'm saying. Like I all of a sudden just end up in this place where it's like so many of these moments where I'll be like, yeah, like interns are like, people are asking to intern, so yeah, let's do it. And then I look back and it's like I wrote 5 years ago that I wanted to have interns.
Wow.
But in that moment I wasn't thinking, oh yeah, this is going to accomplish this.
Right.
Sure.
Or like getting into fashion. That was the same idea. I was like, I don't think I've ever wanted to be in fashion. And then I literally found a something that I wrote up that was like fashion in 5 years, and it was exactly that. So it's weird. It's like, it's definitely, I think it's important to have a bird's eye view and then very much live in the moment, you know?
No, that's so cool.
Very true.
I think, you know, for all the beautiful people, because we don't have ugly people that watch us,
No,
all the beautiful
not
people
allowed.
out there, I think everyone's beautiful
Agreed.
in their own way, right?
Agreed. And that's what you have, one thing you
Unless
have to
they have
do,
an ugly attitude, then we'll talk about that in a different show.
but that's one thing you have to see in photography.
yes,
Because you're gonna shoot all kinds of people, and
all
so to
sorts.
be,
Feel
if I'm
beauty.
feeling like I'm judging them in any way, I literally can't. I have to find what is a side of them that like.
That's why I've
is-
always
I
loved
talk
those.
about this in coaching, like
Yeah.
when I'm training vocal coaches as well, is you have to mine for the golden people
Yeah.
in your artists, and you might
Yeah,
come
true.
into contact with somebody who comes into your studio who kind of stinks, like
Yeah.
their voice is sort of bad,
Right.
But
just
is
BO.
that your perspective? Oh, Jason, is that like, are you going to come in with that lens of like, gosh, this person's
Right.
hard to find, you know,
Yeah.
this person's hard to help, they're not very good, or are you going to choose to find the beauty in someone's voice because
Yeah.
it's there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Right.
sometimes have to look
Absolutely.
harder in
Right.
some
You do.
people than in others. It's more obscure, and you have to
Right.
mine for the golden people.
Right. It's so true. It's
So
so
I've
true.
always loved, like, you know, photo books, especially of like, you know, photos of people across America or across the world, whatever, because you see the uniqueness of people
Right.
in all facets. It's not,
It's
we get
insane.
inundated all the time with just pretty people,
Right.
for sure, in
Right.
marketing, especially in this country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to really be able to see from your mind and your eye the beauty in every subject that you're
Yeah.
working with.
Right. Like they were a diamond. You have to
that's-
find like that
that's really
side
special.
of them. You know.
Yeah.
What I mean, I started to say for everyone out there, like, can you just talk to us a minute about how important, because now you do photography, but especially with the umbrella of creative direction.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's a much bigger puzzle. It's a much more important, I think, overall,
Right.
overriding trajectory for anyone's career, especially as singers or an artist.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe help us understand what that process looks like, how
Yeah.
important it is in
Right.
the overall big picture.
Right.
And what is creative
Yeah, and
direction?
what exactly is it? You know?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, creative direction, I believe, is just, you know, it is that bird's eye view of that, like, holistically that person and kind of in every way, you
The
know,
whole brand.
the whole brand, but also the whole, like, every vibe that they're giving off, like, all of that, I think, is part of creative direction. And so
And it's intentional when
yes,
you're a creative
yes,
director, right?
yeah,
And you see
right.
that it has to be intentional versus
Right.
most, I think, creative people are just sort of like, I just give off vibes. It's
Yeah.
my personality. Not realizing how they need to be intentional.
Right.
And how stuff doesn't necessarily just happen unless you're
No.
doing that on purpose.
Right, exactly. And I think there's something so important about, I think there's like two different creative worlds that are happening, where the one that like is very much like, we are creating this person. We have a hole in the market for this type of human. Can you become that?
Like a
Right.
Justin Bieber.
Yeah,
In
like,
the early
and,
days.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's like almost like a acting moment, you know, like
Right.
you're creating this whole thing.
And some artist
versus-
development, I think, goes in that route. goes in
Yeah,
that direction.
yeah, and that's if that's what a person's amazing at, is that they can channel a character. Like, that's incredible. Like someone like
Sure.
Grimes, like, created an
Yeah,
entire character
totally.
and then was like, who is this character, and I'm going to creative direct around that, which totally works. It's totally worked for her.
That's
you know?
I've always talked about Lady Gaga because I think
Yeah.
she's so
I was thinking
brilliant,
of
and
her
she's
too.
evolved into multiple artists,
Yes.
even though she's
Yeah.
still the same
Right.
singer and
Beyonce.
artist.
Right.
Kind of done
So
that.
Right,
Beyonce's done that
exactly.
as well.
Exactly.
You know, and I can
Right.
only imagine how big their creative teams are
Yes.
overall.
Oh,
You may
it's
know
insane.
some of them. But
It's
like,
insane.
yeah.
But I think that there is that side, and I think it's really it can be so creative, it can be so inventive and evolving constantly. And then in the same route, like this other side where it's, you know, who is this human, and what
Right.
is their, you know, what's like, what areas can I highlight of them that are you know, the most marketable and the most, like, you know, all of that. And so, yeah, it's all the branding, all photos, video, you know, like just everything front facing, everything you see, everything you feel beyond the music, you know? And so, and it is kind of, you know, it's interpreting the music, but it's also like, I don't believe necessarily in interpreting it. Like, I think it's so bad when things are on the nose. So you kind of need to like interpret it more so with this thread of like, who's this person, you know, what were they like feeling maybe in this moment versus like, what are literally the lyrics saying, you know?
Can you give us an example of like a project that you've directed that you're just maybe just super proud of, or there's something really special that happened with that one?
Yeah.
In some way?
Let me see. Like as far as creative direction goes, that's been a more recent thing in the past couple years. So one of the ones that was so fun this past year I did just like basically all the video stuff, all the video content, all the photo content, and then all the design work as well, and then all the like even like the little things that you would see on Instagram and like all the things. And so I think that was amazing because there was this one moment with the artist where I had this like it was a weird existential moment where this other project I had worked on, I kind of was like, you know, it was years and years ago, and there was some song was released that I was just like, it was just a full circle moment. I was very emotional about it. And then all of a sudden he calls and he was like, I just looked through the photos and like, I don't know if I've ever been seen before like this. Like you really like saw me. Wow. Like in this moment, you know, like this. And he's like, you know, I haven't felt like this with other, you know, scenarios of photos. And so like, there's just like that is the most meaningful thing. And that's like, oh, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I want people to like it, you have to like truly see this person, right? And like that's the way that you can really like extract and show what, and I believe like it really is, it's like the biggest honor, like I get to show how I see this person with this photo, you know, and then also show that person how I see them, you know, so it's like this weird like layered thing. But I don't know, it's been really beautiful. You know?
Such I feel like a little microcosm of like the human existence, and part of how we shine our light is to like reflect back to people how you experience them in a positive way, for their edification and for yours as well.
And that's a really interesting and cool point.
Yeah.
In all of that, where probably oftentimes an artist is just trying to express themselves incredibly uniquely creative through their art, whether the song or the tour or whatever. And I know Shelby and I do a lot of work when it comes to vocals on trying to bring all of that humanity out in the person as natural and as vulnerable as possible.
Right.
And I don't know that I've ever drawn that close connection to what you do, because I see the finished polished product.
Yeah, right.
But that finished polished product to be so effective does at some level have to get to the heart of who that human is.
It's miles deep.
And see them.
It is, and
see them. Even if it's like glammed out as all as long.
Right. Yeah, right.
That really depends on the artist's unique style or their genre, whatever.
100%.
All right.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Because again, take Beyonce, for example. I don't necessarily ever look at Beyonce and just think, wow, she's completely vulnerable, humble, and open.
Yeah.
What I see is this is the queen.
Yeah, right.
She's in charge, and no one's above her.
Right.
But to have that, any of that, that still has to be fundamental in that.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
As opposed to, you know, John Mayer who's just throws it all out there.
Right.
We just see him for who he is.
Exactly.
And we see, to your point, the front-facing, the finished product a lot. What do you think is important for artists who have never really dabbled into hiring a creative director? Maybe they've hired a photographer, right?
Yeah.
Do some shoots, but probably, and in my own experience too, when I was pursuing music as an artist in New York City, and I had a friend who was a great photographer, and she did a photo shoot for me, and it ended up being like the cover art for my little EP, you know?
Yeah.
And I loved the picture that we used for it. It was great, but it had no, like, I was 21. I wasn't thinking about creative direction. I wasn't thinking about going, like, does this really match what I'm trying to put forward in my art here? It was like, I need a good picture to go on the cover of my CD that I'm going to try to sell.
Right.
And so for people who might be in that mindset, or maybe multiple steps ahead, because that was very, very young and green for me.
Yeah.
But what do you recommend to artists that are needing to move beyond having great pictures, great shots, and into more creative direction to help bring together and sew everything in their creativity and in their art and their branding that they're trying to do as an independent artist, especially.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say, I mean, it's so valuable to hire someone to kind of just basically be an outside perspective.
Yeah.
Because I think that a lot of times people are so close to their music. And then I think that's then when things can become like so on the nose then, because they're so involved in it that then they're like, oh, this is exact, like they're trying to step out of it, but it's a little wonky sometimes. It's
hard to.
And so to have another person come in and just be like, this is how I'm experiencing
exactly,
it.
yeah.
Because that is the exact same view of the audience.
Right.
You know?
Yes.
And so
versus what you really want them to get from it yourself.
Right. Because I think also then it leads to a lot of perfectionism, because then you're like, there's a lot of overthought,
ego
involved in it and all that. And so it is very much like, I think just to simply have that first initial like audience view as the creative director and be like, okay, how do I, as a outside person, what would make me like pick up that, you know, what's being sold on the racks anymore? I don't know if it's the CDs or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I don't think
like how do you, but
vinyls
what's gonna
really
make me
vinyls,
vinyls,
has for sure.
Yeah.
But what's gonna make me pick that vinyl up off the rack?
Yeah.
You know, like what's gonna draw me
actually, that is a
in?
great point,
cool.
because it's obviously it's super easy just to stream a song.
Yeah.
And we do that mindlessly because
Right.
it just plays through playlists and everything. But for someone to still go pick up that vinyl or a
Right.
t-shirt
Right.
or to click the subscribe or follow button, that is the true fan.
100%.
And that's really the magic you're helping create by bringing the artist's vision and their art into this space and place where it's going to connect.
Yes, absolutely. And that's, I think, is so important. And that's actually like,
that's the value you bring.
Yes. And as a fan myself, like back in the day, I remember like being like, I would look at these photos and the artist felt so far away. Like they felt so untouchable.
Yeah.
You know, and then there was like books that would come out of my favorite band, like behind the scenes books, and like ones that like you could see them as real humans, you know? And there was something that always drew me to that. And I was like, I want to do whatever this feeling is with my regular work, like with the work that people do initially see, you know?
Yeah.
And so
I think that's a lot of what social media has brought.
100%.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
To see that behind the scenes a little bit.
It has, for sure. But I think it's also brought an increased need for people, artists of all levels, to really hone in on their brand.
Yes, it's really,
because if not, it's
right,
noise.
Right,
it's just,
exactly.
what's today? I'm throwing something else.
And I think like as an artist, but also even a person who's not an artist, they have no idea. Like for me, I know why I'm being drawn to something, but a person who doesn't, they have no idea why they're being drawn to something, but they're like, whoa, what is that? You know? And so to have something that's just so cohesive, like throughout everything, is, I think, really important, because then we're barraged every day with like so much of it, like more than we'd ever have in our whole, like the existence of the world.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so to have something that then is like, oh wait, I think this is tied in with that artist. Oh wait, I think this is tied in with that artist, you know? And so then there's this recognition, and you're being constantly reminded, oh yeah, that's right, I was meaning to listen to that song, because you're, even just by seeing a color or by whatever, like this is actually funny, but it pertains to this, where it's like I just bought the Sofia Coppola's new book Archive, which is just like her entire like, you know, documents of like photos, documents of all of her things that she's ever done movie wise, and the cover is this like really specific pink with this like specific font, and I opened Instagram right after reading this for a bit, and there was that exact same pink, and I was like, it was like some text thing for, I think, like, I don't know, W Magazine or something like that. And I was like, wait, are they covering something in regards to this book?
Yeah.
Because that was the immediate, you know, so it's like, is like,
was it?
Yeah, it wasn't.
Oh,
but it was weird, because it was something about
it still.
It was something about
blue car.
Priscilla Presley still. So I was like, there is still some like weird connection here, but they weren't actually talking about, you know, her specifically.
Well, that's probably fascinating too, because in your realm, starting photography, moving into creative direction, but in that process too, working with a lot of corporate brands in your photography space,
right?
You probably have lots of thoughts in your overall creative direction of how to tie in branding
Yes.
with bigger brands
Yeah.
to the specific project you're working on.
Yeah, I mean,
Which has to be a huge asset.
it's so
Not that you can always make those deals happen, but your mind is there.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's the biggest thing. Specifically, like with bigger brands, it very much is just then, okay, where can that happen? Because most of the time then they have already done the entire, like, everything's already mapped out, like down to like the exact shots that they want, you know? And so then it's like, okay, well, how can I interpret this brand with lighting? How can I interpret this brand with, you know, the expressions of how this model is interacting with me? Because that's a big thing. Like most models can just literally stand there and give you 20 different poses, and I don't even necessarily need to direct, you know? And so, but what is it that I'm trying to get out of, you know, to interpret this brand? So there's those subtle things, like when I am shooting for advertising, that's, you know, where you can still incorporate it. But most of the time they, you know, have already fully mapped a lot of it out. So, yeah.
Do you have any little like nugget for especially people in the early stages of their career that can't afford the whole team? What's an easy place to start in trying to find your personal brand and direct from that space?
Pinterest is like amazing. I mean, that's
and
like
free.
And free. I live on Pinterest. Just building basically, like, instead of thinking through your lyrics and anything like that, it's more like, okay, lay on the couch. How did I feel in this moment? And what are some images that come across your brain, you know? Or look through a magazine or look through Pinterest, and it's great for Pinterest because you can like literally click on something and then look below at all the images that are affiliated with that image, and then you can just go down a rabbit hole and keep following that. And so it, like, basically getting yourself, like, you could be listening to the music or whatever, but like getting yourself into that state of like, how was I feeling in these different moments? And then just basically building like that overall like brand board. And then Canva is incredible. Canva is like so helpful for like basically like look on Pinterest at different, you know, even like graphic things that like feel inspiring and all that, and then just like hone in on that, and then kind of just start shaping everything around that one specific graphic, and maybe find a couple other that have a similar feel.
And then so you create like a brand board like this. What should somebody do with that? Should they take that to a photographer? Should they take that to like a manager or something like that? You know?
Yeah, for sure.
What's kind of the next step?
Yeah, for sure. If they're about to have a photo shoot, taking that to the photographer and having like I like having master ones, and then ones that kind of like have, you know, you break it out where it's like, this is the overall feel. And I think like for me, I try to not get too like precious about things. I very much am like, I don't know why I like this photo. Like, do not interpret it literally, you know? Like, it could be a person hanging off the side of a building, but there's something about it that has a feel that I'm trying to accomplish, you know? Like, I don't want anything about a building. I want nothing about a guy, but I want something that conveys that same thing. So, like, that's where that overall board, like, really is just very, like, I don't know, like, not literal. And so then underneath that is very much like, this is like the packaging. This is what I like for that. This is clothing. This is what I like for that. This is overall coloring and feel. That's what I like for this. Yeah. So as like detailed as you can be is really great, because then, and if you don't know, then that's where, you know, a creative director comes in and all of that. So, but yeah, I think just like having these different areas that then you can kind of like, you know, go into is really helpful to take to whoever you're ending up working with.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I love about this whole conversation is that it's brought more clarity to my mind, even though I'm in this business and understand all of this, but just a reminder of how important the overall brand is, especially in today's music culture.
Yes. Yeah.
Where as an artist, again, it's really easy just to throw stuff and see what sticks. That is one way to do it.
Right.
But I fully believe you're probably going to go halfway insane in the process.
Yeah. Right.
Because you're going to get frustrated continuously.
Right.
But instead, if you can, even with your budget not being much, or if you have a lot, really starting to focus in on who you are personally and what the images that you're trying to portray, because it's just become so much more than just your song and your music anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's rare that just a song hits.
Yes. Yeah.
It's oftentimes it's from something else or some other space,
Right.
or association even.
Right. Right.
And all that flows from the brand.
Yes. It's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true.
So you're way more important than I thought you were.
But on that, thank you. But on that note, real quick, because I do feel like people can get discouraged if they are like, just starting out or they don't have a big budget. Like
For sure.
Lana Del Rey, Sky Ferreira, like all these people, like literally started out by like a little point and shoot camera and like nothing. Like so many of these like cool like indie artists are shooting things on iPhones. They're shooting things that like. It's like I've seen artwork that's literally a screenshot of something. Like it doesn't have to be anything. Like it literally could be anything you want as long as it's consistent.
Yeah.
And uniquely personally
yes,
you.
Right, exactly.
Where it can resonate with an
Right.
audience.
100%.
I love what you're saying too, because it's both simplifying it but also being intentional. And I think the algorithms of social media change so constantly that it is confusing for artists to sort of be, is it supposed to be this well-produced video with amazing captions that are done in CapCut, or is it supposed to be really raw and uncut?
Right.
And literally the algorithm changes
Yeah.
from week to week. Of like, now it prefers this, now it prefers that. And people are kind of like, rah.
Yeah.
And the problem, I think, with living and dying by the algorithm is that you don't have a sense of personal branding and identity. You're just doing whatever the algorithm tells you what you should do.
Yes. Yeah.
And I tell this to artists a lot when they're trying to figure out artist development is like, you do need to understand what your brand needs to be, what you want, what you're trying to present to the world of who you are. Because if you don't, someone else will tell you what you should be.
Yeah.
They'll put you in the little vending machine of the music industry, and out pops insert whoever's famous at that moment, whoever's like having their moment in the light, and not knowing who you are and what you're there to do and how you want to shine your light to the world is a big problem.
It's
because then you'll wash out. You might have a reel go viral or something pops off, but then you're gone the next day. And you see this a lot with these artists who have in the last couple of years, or I've seen this a lot with these artists who try to sort of, especially female pop artists, have tried to do a lot of emulating Billie Eilish. Yeah. And I swear to you, this is where I'm going to get on my little whiny soapbox, is I swear they sound like they just laid down on a couch and cut a vocal, like half asleep. And I'm like, can you please wake up? Like, yes, she does that like kind of breathy thing and it's cool, but please don't think that that's how you do this.
Yes.
And be successful. And you have no identity. And so they might have a song that's charting, that iTunes or Spotify is sort of pimping out there a little bit, and then the next thing you know, I couldn't tell you what that person's name is, and the song never shows up again, or they don't ever have anything that really amounts to anything. And so when you don't have, I love what you're saying. Coming back to that is, it's don't be so precious. Don't overthink what you like, but put it all out there so that then you can begin to have clarity. And that's maybe the biggest lesson is
100%.
How important clarity is.
Yeah, and I think even
creative direction and all of that.
Yeah, I think it's even like before someone gets signed too. I think it's one of the most important times. Yeah, to really hone in. Number one, because I think you're more sellable to a label, but then
labels don't do much development anymore.
Exactly. But then at the same time, I think too, like what you were saying, to kind of not be so shaped. You are immediately selling them something that you're like, this is the vibe. This is the vibe that I'm selling. This is what who I am. So it's much harder to go in and then them to totally shape you in a different way. I mean, it still happens, but at the same time, like, I think being, even as a human, really confident in that space and who you are and what you're developing, I think is really key.
So key.
Yeah.
This has been fantastic, Sarah. It's
I
got
loved
me
it.
thinking like crazy. It's another space where oftentimes it gets pushed down to the bottom. Yeah. Again, the budget's always come into that. I get it. Even at labels, it can happen. But the creative direction of an artist is so highly important. Yeah. Equally to their actual skill set, singing or whatever, or writing, whatever. And we live in a space where there are millions of photographers. Yeah. There are millions of vocal coaches. Yeah. And it really is finding that person who has a history like you do. Yeah. Working with huge artists who can really really help someone find that direction. And you do some coaching and training yourself, correct? Or you do workshops occasionally, things like that.
Internships. I've done that all of that in the past, and I love it. I just love, like, I don't know. I think there should be no gatekeeping in this realm, because it's like there is nobody else like me, and there's nobody else like that person.
That's so great.
That was honestly like part of the point of our podcast was like, no more gatekeeping. Like, let's just open the gates. Like, this is how it's done. Right. This is what needs to be done. Why would it be a secret for anymore?
And I think in that too, on the other side of, like, I was having this conversation with a person the other day, like, it's not even just about gatekeeping for the sake of, like, benefiting other artists, but in the industry, keeping the industry accountable too. I think that's really important.
That's actually really good.
Yes.
I think that's really important, because
we need more of that in our world.
Because the amount of people who come to me being like, "Is this a rate that's good? Is this a rate that's good? What are people like whatever?" I'm like, this
people
should be public knowledge,
it should,
right?
You're right.
And I should know, like, oh, this is what I'm like, am entitled to, and I didn't know that when I started,
it's the Wild
you
West.
can get really taken advantage of,
right?
So I think to keep corporations accountable too, like, hey, this is what people are owed, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah.
Well,
I love it. Well, we should do something together sometime.
Yes.
I think we should.
Yes, absolutely.
What'd you start to ask, Shelby?
I was just going to ask, well, I kind of have like 2 questions. So I know we need to wrap it up. So these are kind of quick. I know people have NDAs and all that jazz, but is there are any kind of names you can drop of telling our friends here? Like, who's some of the people that you've worked with that maybe they've known about?
Yeah,
Come on, that's why we're here.
I've worked with, me and my business partner did Taylor Swift's Red in 1989 original album.
No big deal.
And then we did what is it? Pharrell. We've worked with for a few covers. We did
who's now the creative director for?
Yes,
Louis Vuitton.
Amazing.
Crazy.
I know, insane.
I always think, like, what's his check?
Yeah, I know, that's crazy. Halsey, Meghan Trainor. I mean, I'm trying to think. I'm gonna butcher, but yeah.
We bring legit people to this space, you guys.
Thousands.
And so big brands like Hollister.
Yes.
And
Hollister, Buck Mason, DSW, Crate and Barrel, all of that. So.
Oh my gosh,
and
you're
now
kind
the
of a big
Vocal
deal.
Lab. Here we
kind
are.
of a big deal. Sarah, the other question I was going to ask is, where can people find you when they're like, oh my gosh, I need to know more about her.
Yes.
And, deep dive into your world. Where would they go to find you?
I would just say my Instagram is probably the best, because then I have links for everything from there. But just Sarah Barlow, SarahBarlow.
And we'll have that listed. Yeah, we'll link it. And if you all need a creative director, she's probably got some space here or there on a calendar.
Maybe in a couple years.
She may not.
A couple years down the line.
She may not have space. But you can try.
Yeah.
Just like you called the Chicago photo studio.
Yeah. Right.
And they were like, not yet. And then a few months later, they were like, actually, yes.
I do have some smaller artists that, like, I shot someone recently that it was their first photo shoot they've ever done. And she was like, I was like so nervous about reaching out to you, like whether or not you would even get back to me. But I'm like, you never know. There might be a little break
There's
in the
always
the Bible has taught us you do not have
space.
because you do not ask.
Yes, exactly.
So,
it never hurts to ask.
It does
Absolutely.
not.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again for being with us.
Thank you so much.
It was so amazing. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to the Vocal Lab podcast. Ready to join the top ranks of the music industry? Don't forget to follow and subscribe for more first-class conversations that make the extraordinary your new ordinary. Until next time, keep striving for your top note.